system, we couldn't get a line.
We
It
are
worked for an hour,
live.
finally got a line. He said, all right, push the button, which is,
It's like a
push the mute
self-destruct
button.
button.
And there's one that says talk. I said, well, I want to talk, so I pushed that one, hung up. We were screwed for half an hour.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
Call the finance meeting to order. Need a motion to accept the June 11th, 2020 minutes.
So moved, Brian.
So moved by Dave. Do I have a second? Second by Cassie Fedler. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carried. Okay, department reports. We're starting with the treasurer. There he is.
Good morning.
Morning, Al.
I have my packet as a PDF if you want me to share my screen. Otherwise, I'll just talk about it and you can have it attached to the minutes. Your preference, Chairman.
Whatever you think's quicker and easier.
It'll be quicker just to run through it and then I can send it out to you all later if you want.
Excellent.
So we'll start with sales tax. The July 1st payment was down $125,000 from this time last year, which puts us $376,000 down for the year, or 3.86% down. There's a
What was that percentage, please?
3.86.
Thank you.
There'll be a reconciliation payment coming on July 13th. That's a really important one for two reasons. One, it's gonna show us if the $500,000 bump that we got last time is real, number one. And number two, it's the last deposit. Matt? Mr. Hicks? Matt, did you need something? Are we good, Chairman? Can you still hear me, Brian? Can you hear me, Brian?
I can hear you, Al, but I'm on my phone.
Yeah, we're on the Zoom. We can hear you, Al, but I don't know what's going on with Brian.
Yeah,
Jack, we can hear you.
we
could
can
have the
hear you
meeting.
now.
I'm good. I'm just gonna keep going then. So the next deposit's important also because it's the last deposit that determines your distribution for the town for next year. What's good is looking at it, the collections prior to COVID were strong enough that you're going to be probably no less than last year, and there's a 90% chance you're going to be a little bit more than last year on what your 7% distribution is. So that's good news for the towns, obviously. And I think we talked about this last month. Any impact you see of COVID is really going to be for 2022. Even if our next deposit is flat, your distribution is going to be up over last year's distribution. So that's pretty decent news as far as your town budgets go, I think. If this sales tax trend is real and continues, it's going to put us about $837,000 down from last year, which is only about $554,000 under budget. So I'm kind of hoping that percentage stays relatively close to that number, because you remember last month we were predicting anything between $1.5 to $4 million deficit. So if this 3.86% is what the actual number is, that's pretty significant in going forward in our sales tax number. Again, if we have another round of this in the fall and they shut everything down again, that's a game changer. But for right now, the news is better than predicted. So I can live with that for now. In your packet, you're going to see a report from NISAC. They've been able to compile what they have been reported is the additional monies received due to the increase in the online sales tax. The amount reflected for Washington County was $768,581. What I thought was interesting on the report is across the state, the percentages are 2.8 to 3%, pretty consistent. Again, I'm not really a believer that every county in New York State has the same spending habits. So I don't know how much I trust those numbers, but those are the numbers that NISAC's reporting. As far as our cash position, we are actually down $3.5 million from where we were this time last year. I will be dissecting that to try to figure that out in the near future, and I will report that out to you as well. I know that part of it is because we'll get to the budget numbers in just a minute, but we also have $1 million more in unpaid taxes. What's weird about that is we've actually collected $200,000 more this year than we did this time last year. So we've actually collected $200,000 more during the COVID shutdown than we had collected the same period of time in 2019. As far as the impact of the governor withholding our social services money, I've already had to transfer $800,000 into their account, and they're going to need another $200,000 on Monday. So we're already out the first $1 million impact of that social services money being withheld by the governor. The budget to actual numbers, the net cost in general fund is up $1.8 million over the same time last year. The revenues are down 2.3 million and the expenses are up 489,000. So when you look at those together, it's about a $2.7 million swing. That $2.7 million would account for 2.7 of the $3.5 million in cash flow difference. Because if your net cost is up by 2.7, that's obviously going to affect your cash flow. There is a relationship there. The biggest drivers in the increased expenses right now are IT at 175,000, Board of Elections at 40,000, real property tax services at 160,000. But remember, that spike in real property taxes is the assessing grant. So there's revenue on the other side of that we'll be getting back. It's just not on the books right now. There's $23,000 in the coroners. Public defenders up 34,000 and the DA showing up 134,000. Public safety in total is up 400,000, 52,000 of that's code enforcement, about 200,000 at the sheriff, about 93,000 at public safety and 38,000 at probation. The health departments, as you might expect, are up about 161,000. And surprisingly, social services is pretty flat over last year. So that's kind of a quick snapshot of where we are. Like I said, I'm gonna follow up with you all after July 13th, the sales tax deposit, because we'll then be able to calculate your 2021 sales tax distribution for your towns. And I also want to dig a little bit deeper into that cash position to see if I can diagnose some of what's driving that, because $3.5 million less than this time last year is not insignificant.
That's true. Okay, are there any questions for Al? Okay, well, thanks, Al. And we're on to the county administrator.
Am I starting right out with the resolution?
Looks like it.
Okay, resolution A, I've got it shared on the screen, is the amendment to the Youth Bureau budget for the purchase of the riding lawnmower. This is to help compensate for the lack of manpower in the community service program.
Okay. Move it. I don't have a lot of people on my screen, but I moved by Dave. Do I have a second? second by Cassie. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution B is to recognize $176,929 in federal, COVID-19 stimulus funds in the Office for Aging budget. The appropriation to offset this revenue is within the subcontractor line, and as a reminder, that line is what OFA pays the sheriff, for the home delivered meals program. So it's hitting the books in OFA, but indirectly this is gonna be, revenue that trickles down to the sheriff's department to offset additional meal costs that have been incurred throughout, the COVID-19 crisis.
Okay, motion?
I'll move it, Brian.
Moved by Dave, second. Second by Cassie. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
Okay, resolution C is recognize $505 in district funding for public health.
Moved by Dave, second.
Yep, okay.
Second.
Second by Kathy. Any discussion on this one? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right, D is to make an amendment to the sewer district number 2 budget for the CDB Peter Street project in the town of Kingsbury. And this will appropriate $176,132 in fund balance, along with $220,000 in CDBG revenue, for a total project cost of $396,132.
Motion?
Move it.
Moved by Cassie. Is there a second?
I'll
Seconded by Dave. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
Resolution E appropriates, $12,250 in sewer district number 2 fund balance to the capital equipment purchase within sewer district 2 for the procurement of a sewer jetter.
Okay, motion?
move it.
Moved by Dave, second by Don Ward. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I had discussion, Brian.
Okay, go, I can't see you on the screen. Go ahead, Dana.
Is this $12,250 in addition to what was anticipated, or is that the total cost of the jetter?
In addition,
In addition, yes.
What was the original anticipated money?
23, I think.
And this is like a $32,000 machine.
I believe so, 32, 35.
This is right up there with the zero-turn mower.
Maybe we should have alternative sentencing jet the sewers. They can do it a little bit better. Thank you.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Opposed? Carried.
Resolution F, we're moving over to sewer district number 1 now, which is up in the industrial park. So this is going to recognize $11,506 in interfund revenue, and then appropriate $11,506 in appropriated fund balance from sewer district number 1. And the purpose for these funds is the rehabilitation engineering of sewer district number 1. This is the slip lining that we've been talking about for a considerable amount of time.
Okay. I need a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Dave, second. Cassie,
Second.
any discussion on this one? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, now we're back to sewer district number 2, and specifically, increasing contracted services to hire a consultant to finalize the updated operations and maintenance manual for the compost facility.
Okay, need a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Dave, second. By Cassie and Don Ward. Any discussion on this one? Dana Half.
How does the compost reserve get its money in the first place? Is it rollover money? How does that work?
We got Albert.
Go ahead, Al.
A couple of years ago, we passed a resolution establishing a compost reserve for years where the revenues exceeded the expenses. Unfortunately, since the year that it was created, that surplus hasn't happened again.
So there won't be any refilling of this for some time until revenues exceed expenses again?
And I think that the way that Joe has the billing set up now, you probably won't see this reserve filled again, because what they're doing now is it's just Joe and one other partner. And they basically split the expenses based on the amount of material delivered. So they really he bills out based on actual expenses. So I don't think you'll see a surplus in the future. Unless we started getting into selling, if we got some compost sales or whatever, you might see something change, but right now I don't see a surplus in the near future.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
Resolution H moves $300 from a .4 in the jail budget into .2 to cover the additional unappropriated cost for a new magnetometer for the jail lobby.
Move it.
Okay, moved by Cassie, second. Don Ward, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
Okay, resolution I. So, this is a resolution to do a couple things. One is to accept, two is to authorize the chairman to sign all the relevant documents, and then the third part is to establish the budget. This is a $150,000 grant from the New York State Canal Corps, and it partners with a $400,000 plus grant that Laura Oswald was successful in getting 2 CFA rounds ago from Department of State LWRP program. One of the things I'd like to ask the committee today, so this is kind of our standard, accept the grant, establish the budget, authorize the chairman to sign. We have the contract from Canal Corps, and in conversations with Laura Oswald, there's a sense of urgency to the chairman signing the contract because we're not sure what the comptroller is going to do about sweeping any unobligated grant funds. So unless there are objections, what I would maybe posit to the committee today is that if this resolution were passed and there are no objections from the board, if we could maybe have the chairman sign the contract today. We wouldn't expend any money, obviously, until after the full board meeting next Friday, but we'd like to get the signature on that contract and get it back to the state for any sticky fingers down at all to get on the money. I'd also like to make a note on the budget impact statement at the bottom. Originally, and I think this is going back maybe 2.5 years, when this whole Fort Ann to Whitehall section of the trail was conceptualized as a project and Laura was authorized to go after grant money, it was agreed that there would be up to $26,000 in cash from the county as part of the match for these grant funds. A portion of that $26,000 at least was discussed as coming out of the occupancy tax fund. You'll notice in the budget amendment here, this is a simple recognize the revenue, recognize the expense. There's no provision for that $26,000 in cash match. I didn't want to appropriate that $26,000 cash match yet because I don't think we need it at this point. I'm not convinced that we'll get to it this year, and there was no sense in appropriating it this year and then having to reappropriate it next year. If and when we need it, we will appropriate it. I just wanted to make it very clear that that's part of this whole funding scheme, so that everybody was aware.
Very good. Do we have a motion?
I'll move it.
Moved by Dave O'Brien. Do I have a second? Cassie Fezler. I heard someone else. Mr. Hogan, was that you? Okay, any, discussion?
Dana Half.
Dana Half? I can't hear you, Dana.
Right now, the Canal Corp is doing a lot of construction on the bike path in Kingsbury near Route 196. Is the Canal Corp not going all the way to Whitehall, or is this for little side trails that are not part of the canal trail?
Yeah, so the construction that you currently see, up at Smith Basin and down at 196 is being done by Canal Corp. That was bond money from, good gracious, 9 years ago or so. That's all the Canal Corp has funding for. So what the county decided to do 2 or 3 years ago was, after the governor announced the Empire State Trail, the county decided, in partnership with the Champlain Canalway Trail, working group, to try to apply for state funds, to finish the trail sections. The state had only funded it up through Smith Basin, and then it was going to join Route 4 and be on Route 4 and 22 all the way to Whitehall. So this is this $150,000 partnered with the $400,000 LWRP grant from before, is to try to get an off-road trail section from Smith Basin up to Village of Whitehall.
Yeah, it was a public safety thing, Dana. Route 4 is pretty dangerous right through there for the bikes to be on.
Sure is, for cars.
Yeah. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
So just as a clarity point, before I move on to the next resolution, we will have the chairman sign that contract this afternoon unless I hear objections, if that's okay.
I think we're good.
Okay, all right, I just wanted everybody to be on the same page with that one. Okay, now we've got some information from the real property tax director. This looks like a refund issued in the amount of $507.27.
Is this just for our information?
We're coming up on our, yes, this is just information.
Okay,
I don't believe we need a resolution for that.
that's what I'm thinking.
Following that, in your packet, there is, some full value town, county, village tax rates. I'll let you review these, not my bailiwick, I don't wanna dive into it. Resolution J is the standard workday reporting resolution for the Board of Supervisors. You can all see your hours in there. And just as a reminder, we need to adopt this resolution to send it to the retirement system so that, elected officials who don't punch the clock can get, credit in the retirement system. You will notice that there are additional names in here other than just the Board of Supervisors. So again, it is folks who don't, punch the time clock.
Very good. Motion?
I'll move it, Brian.
Moved by Dave, second. Cassie, any discussion? Dana Half?
I see the county clerk is working more days in the month than there are days in the month. Is that because in excess of 7 hours is counted? I mean, there's,
Yeah, it
Weekends,
doesn't
weekends.
change anything at the pension system, that you can only get up to what the total is.
but how is that possible? You work more days than there are in the month.
I think it's because you work more hours. And because we set the schedule of how many hours in a day, so if you work more hours, it adds up to more days.
I don't wanna weigh in because this isn't my area of expertise. I defer to Debbie and or Al on
Yeah.
this one.
Anything you wanna add to that, Deb?
No, she won't get credit only for the,
Right, you only get credit for 100%, you don't get anything over.
she's a 7-hour employee, but she could be putting in,
9, yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Brian,
All in favor? Yes,
Brian, this is Sue Clary. I'm looking
Yep.
at my hours and I'm not sure where they came from, but I know that I work a lot more than 2.67 hours in a month.
Days.
That's
So those are days.
So that's
Those
days.
are days. and those are county days, your town days would be separate.
Okay,
So it should be from the report that you would have filled out once upon a time.
correct.
Yep.
If she doesn't
That would be
feel-
16 hours.
And if you think you're putting in a lot more time than that, you need to fill out the new form.
Yeah, we gotta do a new journal and then we can do it in a.
Right.
But this would still go through today, and that would just be amended later, right?
Yes,
yes.
Okay. I would like to do that. Thanks.
Very good. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, and then the last resolution in the package is to set the public hearing on the ACC budget for, the upcoming board.
And that will come straight from ACC. We don't have to do that today either. That's right,
Correct.
so we're good.
That's an FYI.
Yep. Okay. DPW, Marcicelli, Benton, Dugan Bridge is next.
Okay, so that one, we did talk about it in the Public Works Committee. I had a conversation with the superintendent, following that. We don't need a budget amendment at this point. So she needs to get more documents from the state. So give her the go-ahead to engage the, engineer. She's not gonna spend any money until we have that Schedule A and we brought it back to you. So that's just kind of in a holding pattern until we get more documents from the state.
Okay, and real property you've already covered. So I put solar pilots on here just because, the IDA has been investigating what was brought to us from the solar companies, and we don't have any new numbers yet. They're actually working on them. Al met with the group yesterday. There's some interesting things that are different from what we've heard before. Some of it's the same stuff. And at this point, it's just being investigated. We're not any further along than we've been in the past 5 years on this. So I don't know where it's going. My idea of putting it here was just to report out from the IDA, because I think we need to do a better job with all our groups, whether it be Intercounty, Adirondack Review Board, whatever. There should be some mechanism for us to say to the rest of the board, hey, here's what we did at our meeting last week. You need to know because you sent me there to do it. That's kind of what I was looking at here. And I know Dana Hogan asked for numbers when we were on that last meeting that they have not yet provided for us, but they supposedly are. I believe that everything we should have for the IDA meeting, which is a week from Monday, and then we can cover all that. But until they get us all the numbers so we can look at them, it's going to be hard to report out. So I would say people that are really, really interested should really be probably at that IDA meeting, whether it be Zoom or however, because I think that's when we're going to get the first blush of the numbers. My idea was that if we're going to move along with anything like this, I would like all the supervisors to be involved from the get-go, because if a certain amount of us learn a certain amount for 3 months before everybody else gets to learn, then it's a heck of a reach to get everybody to that level. And so this was my opportunity to try to move that along so we could all learn something to once. And, you know, if we learn so much that we say it's time to head for the hills, I'm going to say we head for the hills. But if there's something in it that's advantageous to the county, well, we should at least do our due diligence and see if we want to go that direction. So that's kind of where that's at. I don't know, Dana, half you have some discussion.
Brian?
I got Dana half. Go ahead, Dana.
Brian, I'm glad you're bringing this up for discussion. I understand you've gotten some heat for bringing this up for discussion. It's like, you know, a little bit of an enclosed society there. I am very concerned because a few years back, when the county, many school districts, villages, the various taxing jurisdictions opted out of solar and alternative energy, and Laura may correct me, I think it's 487 is the section. During all that discussion, I don't ever recall hearing that the IDA could do an end run around taxing jurisdictions that opted out, which would basically force them to opt in. And maybe as an authority, maybe they can, but that was never discussed as to what giant loophole is out there that could go against the implicit wishes of the towns. In Hartford, we pass a local law to opt out. Now I'm hearing if the IDA wanted to offer a pilot on alternative energy, they could. And boy, I tell you, this is dangerous territory. And I implore the IDA, you need to look at what taxing jurisdictions have opted out, and please do not go against the wishes of those jurisdictions. Now, I also understand on the IDA website, you can go and find where in 1999, many towns decided that they would not allow the IDA to do pilots in their towns without input from the towns. Hartford's not on that list, 1999. I understand you can opt in at any, or you can get on that list at any time. I think just to cover ourselves, Hartford might do it, but if you are a town that opted out of 487, beware, you could still have a pilot program in your town through the IDA if they go against the wishes of the town.
Very good. Dave O'Brien.
So, part of the reasons we're looking at this is on the recommendations of our Economic Development Coordinator, and it will cite some references she made in the meeting last week. This isn't verbatim, but it is notes of what she said. Ms. Oswald noted in her opinion, the solar IDA pilot discussions will need to continue, referring to the recently passed Renewable Energy Growth and Community Benefit Act, which takes the ability to control large-scale solar projects out of the hands of the local municipality and puts all the permitting and regulations into the hands of a new office that's under the oversight of the Department of State. This new office can bypass all the permitting, regulations, and seeker, but does not have the ability to award pilots where the IDE would have 60 days to decide on a pilot. Now, having said that, that's our recommendation from that. We're not involved in this because we want to do solar pilots. We were asked to take a look at it. We were asked to see if there was something that was beneficial to the towns, the counties, the municipalities. I stated in that same meeting that I am concerned where the numbers are go and what it does to local communities. But I think it's worth the discussion to see if there's any potential benefits to the town, community, and county. And as far as opting in or opting out, every time IDA does a solar, any type of pilot, one of the first requirements is we have to have a public hearing in every single town. So that gives people the ability to give their input. Yes, I understand that we look at it in terms of there are some towns that opt out and has to take another step in there. But I think that we are not doing this in a vacuum. We opened our first meeting, our second meeting on solar to all the supervisors. I would encourage every single supervisor to come to any IDA board meeting and ask any questions about what we do or why we do it. So we're looking at that. I'm not saying we're for solar, I'm against solar pilots, or against. I want to know the benefits and why it may make it better for all communities. Is there a way that when we looked at this, that we were indicated that potentially what the numbers they claimed was it was beneficial, more beneficial for communities, municipalities to go under a pilot agreement than others. I don't know the answer to that. We're still looking for it. We had a very productive conversation yesterday, which pointed out some evidence we hadn't thought about, but I can guarantee you that every meeting that we have about solar pilots, we will invite every supervisor and anyone who's willing to come and listen and turn in and give us your opinion. We're not an organization that does things in a vacuum. Everything we've done is public and upfront. And you're all welcome to come and share and learn about what the IDE has to contribute and what they have done for the entire community over the past 50 years.
Mr. Hicks?
By the same token, Dave, it's your responsibility as our representatives to bring that information back to us. Don't put the burden on us to have to attend all your IDA meetings. You guys need to vet this whole thing, bring the information back to us, and inform us to say, based upon this, this is how it will affect the assessment in the county, in your town, how the rates will change. I'm asking you to take the burden off us to attend your meetings, and it's your burden to bring it back to us and inform us what's going on.
Okay, so to go from there, and this was what my attempt was, and I guess I failed miserably. I wanted to start with this because I wanted just a synopsis of where it was, good, bad, ugly, and any data to back it up, and we just have no information. But to go back to Dave as chair of the Lake George, Lake Champlain Planning Board, or whatever it's called. And if you remember, that debacle was all about a lack of trust and transparency, and nothing ever came back to us. And in seeing how that worked, it's now been straightened out. I'm thinking, well, we aren't any different with any of these other groups that we've had. I mean, I go to the Adirondack Review Board. If there's something I think I should bring back, I try to get it out there, but maybe we should be a little more formal that whoever's on these different groups, that somebody, even if it's just intercounty, because in intercounty you have a huge amount of information from NISAC, there should be a way that all that information comes to the board. Yeah, we could send them the minutes, you could do all that, but maybe you just need to take a few minutes at the end of the board meeting when it's board members' privilege to the floor and say, hey, just want you to know, this is what IDA did this month, or this is what Adirondack Review Board talked about, or, you know, this is what we learned at Intercounty. There has to be a simple, concise way where we just communicate with each other so we know what's going on. That's kind of where I'm trying to get. I don't know where it belongs. I'm not sure that everything should be in finance just because I'm the finance chair. I think more so that no matter what group it is, whether it's the fish and game part that Bob Henke does, or like Bob will send emails out and stuff, which is a good way too. But I just wonder if does everybody read that or do they just delete it? I'm thinking, should there be a way that we just get a small synopsis, whether it be a paragraph or a 30-second blurb in a meeting, this is what we're doing. I think that would be very important to all of us with all the groups. I'm not trying to single out any one. It should be all of them. We should hear something. Dave.
So, here's my point.
Ryan, I got a question.
My point is that we have 2 members of the IDA here as supervisors. There's 10 other people, or 8 other people on the board. If you have specific questions you want to contribute to the conversation, there is the vehicle for that. I don't mind coming back and reporting and bringing the information back. But there are people who have very specific questions about the operation of the ID, how it works. There are questions I've heard come up that are very specific about the abilities and what the IDA can do and why it does it a certain way. I mean, those questions to be asked, we have a legal counsel there who understands all the issues and understands the background for it. I'm not a lawyer. I can't decipher some of the code up there. I read the laws and stuff. But they can do it because they got their degree for it. So I'm just saying that you're welcome to the IDA meetings. You're welcome to ask questions, especially if you have concerns about solar or any specific project. Come and listen and talk and ask your questions where all the IDA board member hears it.
Okay, I see that point. Do you understand my point? That it's incumbent upon you two to bring it back to us? I'm sorry, I'm gonna ask you to spoon feed it to us, but you kinda gotta.
Yeah, and I think that, and I'm saying it shouldn't just be the IDA, it should be every one of these groups that have appointments too. That's where I was going. Dana Hogan, yes.
Brian, I just heard, I think David indicated that this was generated from an issue related to how it's been changed to the state level. 487 allows you to opt back in to negotiate pilots on behalf of the local communities. So if communities want to take that option, they can, as I understand it, opt back into 487. And Roger, please correct me if I'm wrong. So if a community like Dana Half has indicated has chosen to opt out because they don't want to negotiate pilots, I think the crux of the matter, the question that I'd like to have answered sometime in the near future is why the IDA would have the authority or at least the incentive to negotiate pilots on behalf of a community that's identified they don't want to negotiate pilots. And that answer, I still don't have an answer to that. I don't have the math that I requested last week. So it feels like to some degree, some of this stuff gets strung along. And while I respect Dave saying that we take the input, I know you listen to the input, but I've seen examples locally where input's provided and the IDA ignores the input and moves along with their decision anyway. And so one of the things I wanted to make, I guess, clarified Is there an incentive by the IDA to make pilot arrangements? Meaning, if they negotiated with a pilot on a Kingsbury solar project, is there an incentive payment that the IDA gets for doing so? Roger, do you know that?
We
I'm
have
asking-
standard fees.
Roger, can you answer that one for me, please?
I can answer that for you. There are, and Mr. Brown can correct me if I'm wrong, there are application fees, for most of these projects. And there's also, based on my past experience with pilots, a portion of, the IDA keeps a portion of the, any fees that are paid for administrative purposes. Which usually there aren't. We talked about that yesterday.
So, I would like to ask a question. How does the IDA earn money to get the operations? Does Washington County fund the IDA? Does Warren County fund the IDA? The
Who are you
answer is no.
asking the question of?
Rhetorical question.
It's rhetorical, Dana.
Rhetorical question. We receive no funding from any source. The administrative fees we have are set, and if every single IDA does the same process, where they have fees, that allows us to fund our operations. I would also like to point out that there are many different areas that the IDA has helped in there, that over the past 50 years, if you look over on Queensbury Avenue or over by the airport, there's tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars of property.
But that's
that was
not,
funded.
that property wouldn't have been developed otherwise, which I think we make,
Pardon?
we make the false argument that that property wouldn't have been developed otherwise. It's prime property.
I'm not saying it was, but the IDA took the lead in that, and they did the part for it, and that helped encourage the area. I don't know if it's been developed or not, but our fees go back into the community. There's no other place for us to go. We fund projects, we help fund projects, we have helped develop properties in the past. That's where the IDA fees go. Yes, there is incentive. How else would we support ourselves?
Well, that's, I think, what's the most troubling about this is that, as Dana Half just pointed out, we have a situation where a community has indicated they want to opt out of RPTL 487 and essentially not negotiate pilots. They have the option to opt back in and negotiate pilots on their own behalf if they choose to do that. That's what Kingsbury's done. And we have a law, a pilot law. So when if a solar company comes to us and says, we want a pilot, or they notify us that they want a solar project in our community, we have 60 days to notify them. This is our pilot law, and here's our negotiation numbers. We actually have the numbers laid out in our law. But it feels like at this point, my concern, and I don't know if that's actually occurring here in Kingsbury, I hope it's not happening, is that if they don't like those pilot negotiations or our pilot law, they can shop the rate with IDA to get a better terms of arrangement. Because some of the numbers I heard the other day, we were talking a 15-year pilot. If I recall last week, they were looking for 25 to 40-year pilots.
25, I believe.
Was 40 referenced anywhere?
The life of the equipment or something might be 40 years, but the pilot was only 25, I do believe.
Only.
That's
25.
their requesting.
Only 25. That's a long time.
Oh, no, I agree. Well, I'm not gonna argue
That's
that.
my point.
That's
It's like
their requesting.
pilot law, when they negotiate, if they don't like our law, they can just turn and go to the IDA and request a negotiation to get a better deal. And that's what troubles me. And as I'm saying,
I think it troubles all of us. I think that's a concern to all of us, and that was my other point that I tried to make, is that we're a board of supervisors. We have different mission statements in some of these things, but we still are all the same people in all these towns within our county, just as Warren is within their county, and we should all be looking out for each other. This is how you work together. This is how it should be done. And the communication lines have to be open. That's where I've been trying to go for years here, and it's tough to keep them open when people here aren't working together.
yeah, I'm not sure
We're
what that
trying-
has to do with what
We're
we're
trying
talking
to change that. What's that?
I guess I'm not understanding what that has to do with this topic right here. I think the concern that we've communicated is that the taxing entity and the jurisdiction in which these pilots are taking place it feels as though it could be removed from the authority of the local towns and the local municipalities, which troubles me.
And that's what it, other than the pilots, the rest of the authority, the state wants to take over anyway. The pilots is the only thing in question at this point, and the governor wanted that, he just didn't get it yet. That doesn't mean he won't.
And again, the local communities can opt back into 487 to address the pilots themselves. They don't need the IDA to do that for them.
Right. The problem is, does the governor take that away? Because that's where he's trying to get to. So in essence, our economic development coordinator said, well, here's the deal. If we could do it as one group, maybe we all do the Kingsbury model. Maybe that should be our county model, should be the Kingsbury model. Maybe the IDA should adopt the Kingsbury model. I'm not opposed to that. I'm just saying that if we had a blanket thing that worked so that certain counties and towns we're not segregated and being taken advantage of in certain ways. We don't think Whitehall got a great pilot the last time. We don't think what's been offered has been a great pilot this time. What we're trying to figure out is, where does it belong, or should we just not even be involved? That's what the due diligence is about. I'm not heading down that road right now, I can tell you that. I want to learn.
Well, and if that's the case, Brian, I would hope it would be brought to a board vote at the county level to allow us to vote on it, and even ratification by the town. Let the town boards ratify any kind of approach that way.
Yeah, and I just don't know the mechanics of that, how that works. But if it could be done that way, I would think that would be a nice way to do it, because we are a board of supervisors. James Griffith, I know I have you. There was someone else had their hand in the air too, but.
Yeah, I just agree with Dana on the approach of undermining, possibly what a town might have in place. So, but you addressed that, so I'm good. Thanks, Brian.
Okay, thanks, James. I got Dana Half.
The way I think, if there was a taxing jurisdiction, which again could be a town, village, or school, that has opted out, then the IDA does it anyway, and there's an incentive of $650,000 to do it, I question the motivation of doing that.
Okay, fair. Kathy Fedler.
In the past, we've had the Lake George's reported into my committee, the Ag Planning Economic Development one. We can start adding the IDA onto that, because it has to do with economic development, and you can report out through that meeting as a suggestion. We have brought in the other entities that work with the county to report out in that committee.
Interesting idea, I like it. Any other comments? Okay. Thank you, everyone. So moving on, the SUNY Adirondack budget. There's really no new information. I've just looked at the packet. There was a lot of things that were vague when we had our meeting. And after the Post-Stars article 2 days ago, I understand why it was vague. They had not informed people who were being cut. There's 126 people being cut or furloughed at this time. And basically, the packet shows there is a 4.7% decrease, which is the $1.5 million out. Our only question will be whether we give them the 2% increase, and the 2% comes from the 2% cap. Over the years, they would ask for whatever they wanted, and it's split according to how many people in each county are enrolled at the college. And it's a pretty simple formula, and ours is around 31,000 this year. Warren County's is around 40,000, or maybe it's 30 and 41. I looked at it, but I might have had those backwards. So that's where we're really at. Warren County is going to do whatever we're going to do with the discussion I had with their budget officer. So the problem is, when you don't give them the increase, you lose tenfold in the years going forward because of maintenance of effort, and whenever they dip into more fund balance, it takes down when they restore the fund balance, because the fund balance is going to really get depleted this time around. When they restore it, it takes away the chargeback number to the other counties. It actually lowers it. So it just drives more money to the actual, kids that are attending there. So, you know, it's 6 of one, half of a dozen of another, but our 2% gets, I don't know the actual times it gets multiplied, but if it doesn't get spent, the amount that it costs the kids is ridiculously high. And we can go into that further. I would assume we're gonna see something different by the August board meeting when we actually adopt the budget. I'm not for sure on that. I just know the public hearing's being set at this, meeting coming up here in July, and that came from the SUNY Adirondack Committee. So I'll keep you abreast of that as I learn anything more, but I realize now that the cuts they had to make were an unbelievable number, and that's how they got the 1.5 million out, and that's kind of why it was vague, because I don't think anybody had been notified who was being cut yet. So as we move forward, we'll know more before the August meeting. Hopefully, we know something by August finance. Okay, other business, I have a couple.
Brian, on that,
Yep.
so this next Friday, we're setting the public hearing for the August meeting,
Yes,
and then at the August meeting, we'll have the public hearing, and then we'll potentially vote on the budget then.
yes,
Just want to double check.
yep. Is there any other questions on that? Everybody good? Okay, moving on. So there's a couple of things I need permission from the committee for. I would like to convert 19 and 20's budgets to net costs so we can compare them to the years prior. We've been in net costs for about 5 years at that point. Those 2 years were not done on net cost. I want to do it just so we can compare them, and Al's more than willing to do it. I just want to make sure that nobody has a problem with it, I guess is, so I'll ask, is there anybody that has a problem with converting everything to net cost so we can compare prior years? That's all. Day and a half.
Brian, does this mean you're gonna, in the budget, we're gonna have more columns, or are the columns gonna be changed to what the numbers are?
The columns they'll actually show the benefits within the departments instead of just a separate line. That's the biggest change. Was there anything you wanted to add to that, Chris? That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
You mean what's paid out to retirement and everything else? It's no longer it's no longer in each department. It's congregated. So you want to bring it
Right,
back to each department?
Yeah, because when we did it in the department, you saw the actual cost of the department. The actual cost still is to the department, and we get the actuals are all done in net cost because they have to be, but the budget's not. So it's hard to compare apples to apples. It's just to make it easier for everyone to understand. It's a little tougher to do it budget time.
It used to be that way. What was the rationale to stop doing that? Make it easier?
You just take the budget officers.
Oh.
That's all I know. That's the only reason I can think of, but.
What you're asking today is going back.
Yeah, I just want to make
Rejiggering
sure.
2 years worth to see how the trend was as we went through 16, 17, and 18. Now you're going to change 19 and 20 so you can look back.
So they all look the same.
But going forward, I think is Dana's question, you may change some columns, but right now you're just looking back.
Right now we're just looking back, but hopefully it's so that we can stay consistent, so that every year we're not saying, oh, that's a new column or that's a new column, because that drives everybody nuts too, because everything moved around, you can't compare anything. Mr. Nolet.
So just for clarity, there won't be any new columns. Basically, all this is going to do is take all the fringe benefits that are in the pooled department right now and move them into each individual department like they were for 14 through 17. The only recommendation I would have, Brian, is you probably would want to consider leaving the retirees' health insurance in the pool, because I don't think that that's an operational cost of the department and it will only cloud it. I think you're better off leaving the retirees' health insurance in the pooled category and leaving just
Yep,
the.
I'm good with that.
Okay,
Yep, good with that.
because the whole net cost approach is to show what the operation cost. And I think you cloud it if you run the retirees through there.
Yeah, I think you're correct. So if there's no objections, that's what we're gonna do unless somebody wants to have an actual resolution to do it. I don't know that it matters.
I'm okay with it in the minutes, but whatever we have to do is fine.
Moving on. The second thing I had was, we have an opportunity to go out for a grant that would be either $2,500 or $5,000 per car on electric cars if we decide to go that way in the carpool. Basically, it would be through DSS first and then in the carpool years later. We're looking at that now, and the only reason we're looking is we just got a report from the state. The average cost per year, I think it was on a 5-year basis, maintenance, the actual car I drive, the Chevy Bolt, is like $281 per year for total maintenance costs. The closest thing to it is around $1,000 or $1,200. That's a huge number difference. And because of the opportunities for grants and the opportunities that electric is providing right now, it behooves us to take a look. I just want the ability to go out for a grant because the thing is, the deadline's the 24th. Doesn't mean we'll buy them, doesn't mean we'll even get the grant. I just don't want to miss an opportunity that could be of a larger magnitude than we ever imagined at this point. So I do need a motion to apply for the grant, and it's between it's either $2,500 or $5,000 a car, according to which car they look at. It has to do with under 50 miles of electric or over 50 miles of electric. So I just need a motion to be able to go out for the grant. So do I have a motion? Moved by Cassie Fedler. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Lester Losa. Sue Clary. Is there any discussion, any questions on that? Dana Half.
So you're gonna have to build charging stations, right?
Well, a charging station, you can get a 3-charger station for $1,000. We actually had some fun this week. We actually called a guy in California and took a Zoom meeting with them. They actually had a 6-ton parking space solar unit. They just set down and you don't even hook it to the grid. Wasn't really what we wanted, but we learned a lot out of the deal. But that was interesting because we came to the conclusion that there is a way to actually charge them pretty free with solar.
As long as you don't drive in the wintertime, that's just fine.
No, in the wintertime, they actually will charge, just not as much as they charge in the summertime. So it was just very interesting. The whole thing was interesting, but I never thought of the electric being possibly free, any portion of it. So I guess I was surprised in a good way on that. And since then, I've talked to DISAC on a lot of different things. And it's just a way to look at to change the cost of our carpool. And the maintenance number is what is the huge number on this one. Jay Skelly.
I'll get behind this grant just so that we can discuss it, and somebody better bring a lot of good numbers, because I find it hard to believe that brand new cars are taking $1,000 a year in maintenance. There's something wrong with those numbers if that's the case.
I would gladly agree with you if I wasn't driving one, because the only thing, I haven't changed the tires on it yet, and it's 3 years old. It takes no gas, it takes no grease, it takes no oil, and I haven't changed the wiper blades. The only thing, registrations and tire rotations is the only thing it's had, and it'll be 3 years in November. So if it wasn't for actually owning one and knowing that, I would be with you, Jay, that's unbelievable. But actually owning one and driving it every day, and like I said, I'm right around 37,000 miles. That's all that's been done to it. So I do realize the opportunities there. I never brought it in the past because owning one, I didn't want it to be self-serving. And to me, it always looks self-serving when you're the one that drives one. This way here, I've actually seen what the maintenance savings are. And when I talk to the people in carpool, they had already been looking and they're excited about taking a look at it. The difference would be we might not have, a certified electric mechanic, but the warranties on some of these things are 8 and 10 years on the electric components. So it might be best if we didn't have our own mechanic on the electric portion and they actually got taken care of, by whoever company they may come from. So that's why we're taking a look, but, no, I agree. When you see the numbers, you think it's crazy until you stop and think, well, what have you actually done? You know, and like I said, all I've done is rotated the tires and paid the registration. So, that's kind of what made me really look hard at it. And then when they said, well, you know, you could power the thing, with solar energy and it wouldn't even come off the grid, I'm like, well, that really changes carpool. If we had just 10% of our fleet that wasn't paying for fuel and their maintenance was $200 a year, all of a sudden maybe our mileage number is high enough already because we can actually take that number down as years go by. So that's why I'm looking. It's all about dollars and cents, and it's of course also the initiative that the state's doing, that they're putting money out there to make some of this happen. So that's where I'm at. So is there any more discussion on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Is there any other business that I've left out, forgot? Anything? Go ahead, Chris.
Just as an update to the committee, Melissa and I had a, annual plan review on Thursday of last week with Humana. So Humana is the insurance carrier for our retirees over the age of 65. It's a Medicare and good news and bad news with that. So the good news with that is that all of the different metrics for our plan performance from the prior year look pretty good. I'm hoping to have so that plan renews January 1st. Our active and retirees under 65 renews June 1st. The retirees over 65 renews January 1st. I'm hoping by the end of the month to have the January renewal from Humana. And what we were told last week is to expect a rate decrease. So that is good news.
Not only that, I think they're very, very happy with Humana, right, the retirees?
Yes, and that is a difficult contingency to make happy, and they love Humana. That's a really good plan. The reason for that rate decrease is several-fold. This one, coming up January 1st of 2021, is largely due to basically good claims performance throughout the past year. One of the issues we've seen is that since March, the overall spend in the plan is down somewhere on the magnitude of 25 to 33%.
Well, nobody's there to go to the doctor.
Correct, which is good in the short term and potentially detrimental in the long term for the plan and for this population. Now, the interesting thing with the way that Humana does the claims review for the renewal is that only about a month and a half of that decreased utilization is going to be factored into the 2021 renewal. So not only do I expect the rates for 2021 to go down, but I expect there to be a significant decrease for 2022 that will be larger than our decrease to 2021. What concerns me is the out years, and they're seeing this across the healthcare industry, and they don't really know, there's no actuarial framework to try to forecast what essentially a 4 to 6 month at a minimum hiatus of preventative care is going to do in the out years. So that remains to be seen. But in the short term, good news, Humana retiree over 65 premium should go down, and I hope to have numbers for you by the next budget or the next finance meeting.
Very good. Next.
So Brian, I guess I want to bring up the news we heard yesterday regarding the dewatering facility. And, you know, I have to admit I was sort of committed to the fact that this was all going to happen and everything was going to flow together and work, and I was very happy about that, but now that's sort of upended. And I'm a little remiss in getting back to where we were currently if that doesn't come through. are the two parcels, there's still two parcels down there? I don't know who owns the parcels, have they been subdivided? You know, are there taxes still owed on those? How many years are we out? How much taxes are we out? You know, when do they come due for foreclosure? All that data, I kind of left out of my head because I was very optimistic that things were gonna happen.
Okay, so
I just want to get back to square one.
I'm gonna let Dave give the synopsis of who owns the property and where that's at, and then we're gonna go to Al because I know he has all those numbers.
Great.
So the property is still owned by Fort Edward Local Property Development Corporation. There's 80 acres in that. There are two parcels. There actually one parcel is in the village, one parcel in town. So those still remain under Fort Edward LDPC.
Are they the same parcels from before or?
Yes.
Yes, we were undergoing a subdivision, but now the subdivision
In
can't
the-
take place.
And the subdivision was actually what was forcing the taxes to be paid.
Right.
The subdivision they had to be.
Who owns those two parcels?
Fort Edward,
Local Property Development Corporation.
yes.
Both.
Okay, Al, are you set with the numbers? Looks like he's staring off into space.
You're still muted.
He's bringing them up, must be.
So it's, as far as the taxes, there's 19s and 20s owed on both parcels. The current amount due is a little over $937,000. That's with all the interest and penalties, of course. I can follow up with a more detailed breakdown if you want, so I can break down how much is the base tax, how much is penalty, how much is interest. I can send that out to the board later, but the amount that's due in my office right now is 937 and change. The 2019s would be enforceable next year. So if those taxes remained unpaid, right now our auction is in October. In theory, this would follow that same schedule. So fall of next year, we would have a decision to make on this parcel or these parcels. And with the Fort Edward LPTC being tax exempt, the current village bill that's out there will be the last bill because they've been exempted from taxes going forward.
I'm sorry, Al, they've been exempted from taxes going forward, county, town, and village and school?
Yes, sir.
As of what date?
The current village bill is the last bill.
So that number will stay somewhere around $900,000?
Well,
Yeah.
it's gonna grow from the penalties is all.
That's where I'm headed. It's not gonna grow from any principal, it's gonna grow from any additional interest and penalties. Going forward.
The current village bill is not in that 937 number.
Thank
I
you.
can get that number for you real quick.
It was 48,000 now.
Okay. So there'll be another 48,000 added to that, Matt, and then 1% per month.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
So the 48,000 in April have to make the village whole, correct?
Yes, sir.
But the benefit to not having all these new taxes accrue is we aren't gonna have to make the school, town whole. We're actually saving some money for the county.
Well, not only that, there's still an opportunity to sell this for more than what the taxes are between now and that October date, right, Al?
Yes, sir.
And if not, it's so much less owed than the last time we went through this, that this time, I assume the county would take this and sell it. So,
But Al, by the same token, while we can argue that because they're now tax exempt, we're saving money going forward, your tutorial is the levy is the levy is the levy. It just, what we're saving is getting distributed to everybody else, including county taxpayers throughout the whole area, right?
And I think if you just followed the
Still being paid, just not by us directly.
Right, if you followed the recent Fort Edward school budget vote, you would see that that's true.
Okay, thanks.
day and a half.
So is this a big house of cards that just fell down because it cannot be subdivided and lots of the transfer of property ownership was all pending upon getting money from the sale to pay the taxes, which would allow the subdivision? So all those pending things are not happening now because they cannot be subdivided? But question for Dave. Did the transfer from EPA of that long skinny parcel that has Lock 8 Way, has that been completed?
Yes, it has.
Okay.
Al has his hand up.
Al?
So I wanted to speak to the subdivision. The subdivision, Dana, was only necessary for the buyer that was coming in because they weren't interested in the entire acreage of the two parcels. So right now with that buyer not coming in, there is actually no need to subdivide those parcels.
Right, but what about, there was also a subdivision from FELPDC to WCC for a narrow strip of land immediately adjacent to the wharf. That won't occur either, right?
No, it will not.
That's why I say the whole house of cards falls down with the exception of the transfer of the road from EPA to the IDA.
Which is gonna help unify the road so that potentially at sale, any buyer coming in will have a smoother sailing to get in there. And also, if the county decides to auction or sell it or whatever they do it, if they decide to take it, it increases the value of that property.
Yeah, if we wanna go hindsight here, if the road had already been conquered in January, this probably would have closed before COVID and would have already taken place. I mean, that's just where we would have been, but it's taken that long to get all these pieces together. And in the meantime, COVID happened and it wrecked their business model. I mean, that's
Well,
the bottom line. That's where we're at.
It kind of all circles back because the IDA now owns basically a road to nowhere and a bridge. But yet the solar coming into Kingsbury would pay a fee to the IDA in excess of $650,000. So a lot of these things are connected. And
Not really, so, other than the IDA is the driver, but go ahead.
dollars are dollars.
So, Dana, you're throwing out a number for one project in Kingsbury. That is not true. There are 9 projects represented in that spreadsheet that would total that. Remember that the IDA is then responsible for those properties through the life of the pilot. Because either we would take the property or we do leasebacks on the property. The IDA is responsible for maintaining the administrative function for 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it may be. So, no, it's not $650,000 for one property in Kingsbury, or one solar project in Kingsbury. It's 0.75% of the cost of the project.
And
That's
how many of those,
any project up to $10 million.
how many of those taxing jurisdictions for all these locations opted out? I mean, you have a road to nowhere, Dave, and you're gonna say, how in heck am I gonna maintain this? Oh, here's $650,000.
I think Fort Edward is already maintaining their end, is that right, Dave, or no?
Fort Edward has agreed to maintain their end.
Yes, which is the majority of the road.
There's a bridge on it.
Brian, I have a question.
Go ahead, Dana. There's no bridge on the Fort Edward end.
No kidding, but there's a bridge on that road.
It's 2 questions. Right now, is there free access all the way down to the dewatering facility now with no restrictions? It's all owned by the IDA?
I don't think there can be.
Well,
Great restrictions. Free. I'm sorry, Dan, I didn't hear your
He
question.
wants to know, Dave, is it unrestricted that anybody can just drive down there? I don't think that's the
No,
case.
not necessarily that, Brian. What I'm asking is because it was a reference to the fact that we could now sell it at auction and provide a thoroughfare to the location, to the property. What I'm asking is, are there any restrictions or any companies outside the IDA that own, let's say, a section of that road to the dewatering facility, or are they all now owned by the IDA?
The subdivision has to take place of the road from the piece of property that is owned by WCC.
Okay, so
That
then
subdivision
you have an auctionable piece of property with an access road. Is that fair to say then?
We believe
Fair to
so.
say, as soon as subdivision is taking place, we are working with WCC to complete the transfer. We
Well,
haven't
but
completed the transfer.
Occur until the
We-
taxes are paid, correct?
Pardon?
That subdivision
You're
can't.
fading out, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, the subdivision of the road can. I think it's the Mary Webb piece and
There's
something
no
else.
taxes on any of that property.
Right, on any of the road part.
Okay,
That's all
so-
been tax exempt, except for the WCC piece, and the taxes are paid on that.
Got it. So then the IDA will own the road all the way to the dewatering facility with no restrictions on any property whatsoever. Is that what you're telling us?
I believe that we will ask people who need access that road to, as a matter of fact, we will have to give them an easement on that property to use that. So it's not open access to anyone. The IDA would have to give them an easement to use that property.
So if we
Use
put
that.
property that owes the back taxes on it up for auction, they wouldn't have free and clear access to the site without the IDA's approval.
No, you're correct. They would have. If we put it up for auction, the IDA would give an easement to
Is there
whoever.
durable access to
Yeah.
our parcels? That's the question Dana's asking.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Whoever
Matt.
bought the property,
That's where we're getting to.
yes.
So the answer
That's what
currently
we're
is
trying
no.
to get to, Dana. That's,
No,
And you're trying to make it yes.
We
That's
need
the
the
idea.
subdivision to take place, whatever.
But trying to get to it is not having it. We're suggesting that there's auctionable piece of property now that the IDA owns that road. It doesn't sound like we actually have that.
no, and it's not auctionable for more than 15 months.
It's still
That's the
landlocked,
problem.
but it is still landlocked. That's kind of what I'm trying to say.
Currently.
Those landlocked.
Yeah, right, and that's the part that we're trying to undo, and we
Yeah,
got 15 months
that's
to do
what
it
we're trying
before it would go to auction.
Okay, but that would rely on some private developers to make some, I guess, they gotta make some changes to the way they want that road access to be provided? Is
I
that-
don't think,
I don't think so. It'd be existing pathway down from 196 to the Fort Edward. There's a culvert there that Fort Edward owns, a narrow strip that is going into the facility. So that'd be all clear until the entrance into the facility, the dewatering facility.
Okay.
That would be all under one unified ownership.
Okay, so there's work to do, but it's still not an auctionable piece of property. All right, the second question I had, and I don't know if this is more of a concern or just a vocal concern. I know our code enforcement officer has expressed concern at the recent planning board. If the IDA now owns that road, the question I have is related to safety, because my understanding is we're allowing pedestrians and cyclists to walk and to exercise. It's a private road that can't be monitored for police presence, if you will. And I've also heard of some close calls that have occurred just in the last several months related to motorcyclists and pedestrians down there. And I know back in 2017, 2 kids were airlifted off of that road. I guess my question is the IDA now moving forward with some kind of safety measures or plan to make sure that something tragic doesn't occur? Because that is an attractive nuisance down there for people racing motorcycles and driving fast with cars.
The road will continue to be locked when it's not in use by Canal Corp or anyone else. Most of that time is during the daytime from, I forget what the hours posted are down there, when the gate is locked. I think it's locked at 3:30 every day and sometimes sooner than that because there's just no one using it. So yes, we try and lock it to protect it.
And how about, Dave, I know there was also a traffic study that was completed that is indicating that trucks should not be turning left out of the site onto State Route 196. Is the IDA, now that they're on the road, are they going to request DOT put up signs, traffic safety signs, directing trucks?
I have a
I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
have a meeting with DOT and I'm gonna discuss some of those items. But I think that.
The IDA encourage the DOT. Will you be encouraging them to take the appropriate safety measures to ensure that no trucks are turning left out of the site?
until there is anything there, why would trucks be there?
There's grain
I
trucks
guess.
on the site right now, from what I understand.
Grain trucks.
Oh, that's right, the grain, I forgot the grain. Thank
The
you.
answer is yes, Dana, we'll work on doing something. That was one of my concerns back forward because I wanted to make sure that trucks were going safely out of that and hopefully not going down through the streets in Hudson Falls where there's another direct route that's to get to the Northway that's a lot shorter time-wise than going through Kingsbury.
It should be a through road.
The traffic through Kingsbury, it's just the safety of the egress. From what I'm hearing, it's not safe to turn left out of that site due to the blind. There's kind of some blind spots coming out of, well, so if you're coming from Hartford toward the village of Hudson Falls, it's if you're doing 45 or 55 miles per hour coming off the bridge and there's a truck turning left, you could be turning into a pretty bad situation. And that's why the traffic studies seem to have suggested that they should be turning right out of the location and then taking, I think it's St. James Road, down to 197.
Yeah.
And if it was heavy traffic, they'd probably put up a light. That would be my guess.
Well, again, but the concern I think with the light, Brian, is if you're stopping traffic off of that bridge and people are driving 55 miles per hour down that road, you could create even bigger problems.
Well, if they're stopped though, that's what, that's to make it safer. So I think if that was a very busy intersection, if it was actually, well, to me, it should be a through road. That's just the bottom line. But we've tried that in the past and we'll keep trying that. But that should be a through road to 197.
We started to have that discussion, Brian, in January, and that was kind of pulled from us. If you recall, we were trying to have that discussion with the EPA and the Canal Corp because at the time we felt that was the appropriate time to do it.
And they would not have the discussion.
Well,
I tried on 3 other occasions than that one, and they will not have that discussion at this point.
But
I think they might be a little more willing now, but at that point they would not.
We had to speed up the discussions, and that's why it was removed from discussion with the public, that subcommittee that Sam had asked us to put together. And then the IDA jumped in and said, we have to do this quickly in order to fulfill WL Plastics timeline. Whether that was factual or not, that's what happened. We were trying to just have that discussion about a thoroughfare all the way down to 197.
We were having the discussion, except we were having it alone. Canal Corp would not discuss it. Every time we went back to them, they said it's the first time we've heard it. Well, after you've talked to them 3 times about it, it can't be the third or the first time you heard it. That was what I got every time, and we're going to go that route again, and we'll see if we get told again that it's the first time they've heard it.
Conversation taking place, correct? We did have a record of that conversation taking place in January, correct?
We had it, but every time we've talked to them since, they say it's the first time we've heard it. So they basically are oblivious to even having that discussion.
So
we got absolutely nowhere from all 3 times.
All right, Brian.
Thanks for your input. Is there any other business to come before finance? Day and a half.
Brian, a while back, you were talking about carpool and expenses and maintenance. My daughter just had to replace the brakes on her car because she didn't drive it enough during the COVID quarantines and things like that. We have a lot of carpool cars that have sat for a long, long time. Are we looking at a huge maintenance bill on replacing all those brakes? Because I never knew it, but if your car sits a long time, your brakes get shot.
It's a possibility, Dana. I don't know how, if they've actually used different cars, so some of them are getting used, so all of them are getting used some of the time. We're probably not bad off. If there's been a group that's actually sat and they've only used some of them, that would be a whole different item. And I don't know, Chris, do you know whether they handled it one way or the other? I don't.
There were some cars that sat throughout the shutdown. However, we were just over and talked to the head carpool mechanic the other day, and we went through kind of the status of the cars, what was coming up, what the big maintenance issues were, and that was not identified as one that's pending. And I can say that probably for the last month or so, carpool utilization is back to almost normal, where all our cars are being used. So I think everything has been driven now for about a month since the shutdown, and that issue of brakes having seized or rotten, well, that has not come up. So hopefully we avoided that.
All right, thank you.
Jay Skelly.
Yeah, Brian, just one quick question for Chris there. After seeing our emails yesterday, and I think it was in the paper of all the businesses that got the COVID PPP protection. I know as the county, we planned the overtime was gonna get covered, and then we found out it wasn't gonna get covered, and then maybe it is gonna get covered. Is it a yes, no, or are we still a maybe, Chris?
We're still a maybe. We just got finally, yesterday morning, got the guidance from DHSES on, what they call a public assistance application for the FEMA reimbursement. We're meeting this afternoon at 2:00, to discuss that in more detail, and we're gonna put together a preliminary application and float it up to Homeland Security, and then hopefully we're gonna start to get some answers back.
Your question timing was impeccable, Jay. Is there anything else? Sue Clary?
Just to go back to the Humana. Okay, is it with its New York State retirement, could the cost be affected by the ceiling cap that's been taken off from pharmaceutical? Because that's not included in Humana. That's included in our new prescription plan that you did for the employees, but this is different than that. Does that matter? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, not specifically on that one. The one that helped us out with Humana was, there was a, for lack of a better term, I cannot remember the real term for it, but it's the Cadillac tax,
Okay.
on the health insurance. That was supposed to come back this year as part of, I think, the second round of stimulus funding. The federal government put a 2-year, pause on that. So there was a significant tax on health insurance that was supposed to go into effect January of 21, and it's not going to now until at least January of 23. So that helped us significantly. There are some prescription tweaks that we made in the transition from Blue Shield to Blue Cross that became effective June 1st. But those are detailed and nuanced, and we can go into those in a different meeting if we want to.
Thank you. Can I have one more question?
Sure.
Brian, the contracts that are for mental health and for physical health for a correctional facility, are we looking at that with the reduction of inmates at the jail? Are we going to stay with the same contracts?
I have talked to the sheriff about that. We're under a contract right now, but we have talked about going out and looking at alternative options when that current contract expires.
Because, I mean, those contracts were based on full capacity, right? The ones that we have?
No. If I remember correctly, the provisions of the contract are basically a per service fee. So they're not
Okay.
a flat fee based on 181 inmates. It's a schedule of services and then a fee per service. So when our population fluctuates, the cost of the contracts fluctuates, I believe, but I'm not 100% sure on that. It's been a while since I've looked at it.
Thank you.
Okay, so I need a motion to adjourn. Hearing none, we'll adjourn. Jimmy Griffin, second, Jay Skelly, we stand adjourned.